Hello, everybody. This is the second in the class in the Wilderness Survival Series. We decided to do this online due to the ongoing pandemic and everybody self-isolating. So I'm going to make a short video here that's going to cover the next couple chapters, chapters 5 and 6. If you're following along in the book, it's going to be pages 25 to 34. I'm going to read the first paragraph right straight out of the book because I don't think I could say it better. This is under Survival Priorities. Your most important survival skill is your ability to admit that you are lost or stranded. That is not an easy decision to make. Most people would not admit that they have wandered around for long periods of time and gotten into a worse situation than they would have been in had they admitted their predicament at the beginning. Once you admit that you are lost or stranded, sit down and think. If you have a cell phone, now is the time to call for help and wait. Get control of yourself. Avoid panic and stay calm. Mentally, you must accept the challenge you are facing and make the best of the adventure. If you left a trip plan with a responsible person, chances are that people will be looking for you soon. Your adventure will be short-lived. Even in remote regions of North America, 99% of the missing people on outings are found within 72 hours. You will be too. That all sounds easy. It sounds well and good, but if you've ever been in that situation, you know it's not as easy as it sounds. When the point comes that you realize that you're in over your head and you're in trouble, it's hard to admit. You're going to feel a flood of emotions. You're going to feel embarrassment, fear, guilt. You may even panic. Here's when you really have to take a minute and stop. Sit, think, observe, and plan. You're going to have to force yourself to do this because the default position is to run, to go quickly. It's a panic mode. And if you've ever been in that situation, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a chance you might not be alone. Maybe you're cool as a cucumber and you've been trained and you're experienced in this and you feel fine, but not everybody in your group does. And there's a good chance that somebody in your group is going to start to lose their marbles. So you're going to have to take a leadership role, talk them down, and they're going to react to you. If you act in a panic-stricken, flinting around and going crazy, they're going to respond to that and act in the same way. If you are calm, if you have control of your emotions, if you start directing people to do things, they're going to calm down and they're going to be fine. They're going to take their lead from you. The natural leader is going to rise to the surface. So let's go into stop a little bit more. When I said you're starting to feel that panic well up inside of you, that you need to stop, sit, think, observe, and plan. Just the act of sitting down, forcing yourself to stop moving is going to go a long way. Do some tactical breathing. In for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds. Do that 4 times. You're going to feel your respiratory rate go down. You're going to feel your heartbeat go down. And the fog is going to start to lift and you'll be able to think more clearly. So have a seat and gather your thoughts and your emotions. Then start to think. Think about how you got in this situation, where you came from, what direction you're supposed to be going. Sometimes you just need to stop and think for a minute. Observe. Take a look around your area. Do you see any landmarks that are clear or obvious? And where is the sun? If it was in your face all morning as you were walking in, where is it right now? Observe what the weather looks like because that's going to determine what your next move are. And come up with a plan. Maybe your plan is to set a marker and then go in concentric circles a little bit and try to cut your old path, especially if there's snow on the ground. That may be something you'd be able to do. Just be careful you don't get yourself in a worse predicament because really we don't want to leave our immediate area once we realize that we're lost. The only exception to that would be if you're in the thick brush and you can see that there's a clearing up above you or behind you, or you know there was one 5 minutes back. You're going to want to be in a more open area so that searchers can find you. So we have stop, sit, think, observe, plan. Come up with a plan. What am I going to do next? You know what? Maybe you just got to bite the bullet here and say, I'm lost. If I go any deeper, I'm just going to make things worse. So you need to come up with a plan. Maybe your plan is to just take out your whistle and start blowing on it 3 times. I recommend you carry a whistle because it travels a lot further than your own voice with a lot less effort. You can blow on a whistle pretty gently and make a shrieking sound that people can hear. And remember, threes, survival threes, everything in threes means I need help. 3 gunshots, 3 whistle bursts, 3 shouts, 3 fires, 3 piles of stone, something like that. So make your plan, figure out what you're going to do next. Get your attitude straight. You might realize, okay, this is it. I don't want to do it. This sucks, but I'm going to spend the night in the woods. I don't want to do this. I want to be home in my bed, or I want to make it to that date or that movie I was supposed to go to, or out to dinner tonight. Just get your head around it. Evaluate, improvise, adapt, and overcome. It's something they taught us in the Navy, and we've had to repeat it all the time. Evaluate your situation. Improvise to get the things you need. Adapt your brain to the new set of circumstances, and overcome. That's the sum of it all. So if you decide you're spending the night, you need to do like 7 things at the same time. This is really evident in these shows like Alone, Naked and Afraid, Dual Survival, where once they're in this situation, there's 1,000 things to do. And one of the mistakes that I see a lot of times in these shows is the contestant, the participant, will focus on 1 or 2 and forget the rest. They might go hog wild on building a shelter, but they neglect water, they neglect food, they neglect clothing or fire. So what is it that you need to do first? Like I said, there's like 10 things, 7 to 10 things you want to get done. Well, the first we already did, stop. We've got through that, now we're in the planning phase. Our most important priority is going to be the health of our people, ourselves and those around us. Does anybody need first aid or medical treatment? If you guys have been humping it in the bush all day and you got people that are wore out, do you have anybody that's diabetic in your group? Hyper or hypoglycemic? Anybody have any injuries that we need to attend to? That's your first priority. The next is going to be shelter. We got to figure out what we're going to do for a shelter. I don't know if any of you guys saw the video that Alex and I made on a survival tent and survival bivvy. That's a pretty good alternative to building a brush shelter, which is going to take you 5 or 6 hours to do. After shelter comes fire. We're going to need fire. Fire is life in the wilderness. Fire is for signal. Fire is for boiling water. Fire is for food. Signal is our next one. We want to get a signal going here before long in case people come, because like we said, it's going to be within 72 hours if we filed our trip plan correctly. The next is going to be water. We can go 30 days or more without water. You're not going to go more than 3 days without food. You're not going to go more than 3 days without water. Water is a priority, and you need to find a source of good, clean drinking water. This is Maine. Water is not hard to find. The trouble is not finding it, it's staying out of it. So if you packed accordingly, you should have water treatment tabs, some sort of filtration system. And then the last thing is food. Don't make that a high priority. Take care of these other things. At this point, food is going to be more of a comfort thing. You can go a long time without eating, but if you do have some, I would eat a little bit because it's going to bring your morale up and make you feel better. So we've got first aid and medical, shelter, fire, signal, water, and lastly, food. Now, we can't spend all of our time focusing on one thing. We got to do the first aid, and then we've got to move on and get some kind of a hasty shelter built. We got to think about a fire, and that's a lot of work. If you won't believe how much firewood it takes to keep a fire going all night long. It's an incredible amount. We got to get our signals built, whatever that's going to be. Maybe it's just an orange tarp or an orange rain jacket or something like that we're going to set up. And then we got to get our water. So there's a lot to do all at once. Really what we do is a minimum amount of each to get by, and then we just keep going and improving these things. And that's one of the things you may or may not see, like on the show Alone. Sometimes these contestants will get a minimum shelter built, and they'll get a little bit of water for tonight, and they have a makeshift shelter, and they're okay for 24 hours. Then over the next day or two, you're going to be looking for things to occupy your mind and your body anyway. So improving your shelter, improving your signal, getting more firewood. You'll never have enough firewood. Those are the things that you're going to be working on. One thing I want to talk about quick is your health, both your mental and physical health. When you go into a situation like this, picture a battery indicator like on a cell phone or on a computer or a digital camera, and it shows those bars. When you start out in this situation, you've got all 4 bars. You're fully charged. The longer you can keep those bars all the way to the top, The more that you're at 100% charge, the better you're going to be. As soon as you start weakening and that battery charge indicator starts coming down due to lack of sleep, being cold, being hungry, being thirsty, being stressed out, the more those bars come down, the more you're going to start to make poor decisions. You're not going to be thinking clearly. You might do something that's completely irrational, and that's going to make the problem even worse, and the bars are going to come down even more. So you need to stay fit and you need to stay healthy. Being warm, being fed, being watered, being comfortable, those are a big deal. Like I said, the longer you stay at 100% charge, the longer you're going to be making good decisions and the better you're going to be at the end of this thing. I mean, there's been people who survived weeks and weeks in the wilderness, unimaginable situation, and they do it because they have the will to live and they kept their battery charge up as high as they could. And then there's been people who perished in 72 hours. And a lot of it has to do with your mental attitude and your will to live. And that's about mindset, and we'll get into that in the next chapter a little bit too. I want to tell you guys a story about when I got lost one time. A lot of this stuff that I'm talking about, I'm actually speaking from experience. I was in the Boy Scouts. I started when I was 10. I think I was about 14 or 15 at this time, so I was probably star or life rank. I had a little bit of experience, and I'd been through a lot of this. But I was deer hunting with my father in Vermont in a place that I'd never been to. And I got in the woods and we had a plan, and I was going to go to a certain spot and sit, and he was going to go sit, and then we were going to meet back at the Jeep at dark. Well, on my way into where I was supposed to sit, I caught a really nice set of tracks, and it was a buck. There was snow on the ground, but not a lot. It was kind of spotty. And I started following those tracks, and I followed them and I followed them. And when I realized, yeah, I'm getting further out than I want to be, and I turned around to come back, I decided rather than just following my tracks over hill and over dale to kind of cut diagonal through the woods and go back to where I was. Well, I missed my azimuth, and I don't know what happened, but I ended up in a completely unfamiliar area. And I felt all those feelings, those emotions I was talking about panic. I felt fear, embarrassment. I thought, oh my God, if he's got to come find me and take me out of these woods, I'm never going to hear the end of it. And I didn't want it. I didn't want him to know. I wanted him to think I was a good woodsman, that I was experienced. So I started moving faster because it was starting to get dark now. So I'm going quicker and quicker. And we've all seen the TV shows or the movies of the guy just going through the woods, and I mean, materials falling off them, their hat, losing their hat. I wasn't quite that bad, but I was definitely moving quick and in panic mode and busting through the brush with my head down. And I had worked up a pretty good sweat, as I remember. And all at once, in the far, far distance, I heard a car horn. Beep, beep, beep. Being a Jeep, it's got a distinct horn. I said, oh no, that's him. I'm going in the wrong direction. And I was going completely in the wrong direction. And I thought, well, should I fire a shot back in response? I said, oh no, he'll know how far I'm out. And then, we'll have trouble with that. So I turned around and I started running in the opposite direction. And thankfully, every 5 minutes or so, he'd give that horn 3 honks. And when I came up out of the woods to the Jeep, it's fully dark now. And I was just a wash of sweat and a mess. And he says, what in the world happened to you? And I said, oh, I got on a track of a nice buck and I tracked him a hill over dale, but I never did get to see it. And I never told him the story of how I was really lost. And had he not blown that horn, I would have been spending the night in the woods, I guarantee it. And I don't remember how well prepared I was at the time. I know I didn't have a bivy sack or a pop-up tent or anything like that in my pockets. It would have been a cold, long night. So when I talk about those feelings, those emotions, I know what I'm talking about because I've been through it probably more than once, but that's one that really sticks out in my mind. Big danger in getting all sweated up like what I just talked about. If I would have had to spend the night, I probably would have died of hypothermia. I was soaked to the bone. And that's part of that, keeping your battery charged to 100%. Don't deplete yourself with that kind of rigorous exercise. It's not necessary. It's detrimental. Once you start getting tired and getting weak, especially if you're not eating, you're very prone to injury at that point. And if you hurt yourself bad enough, you might be out of the game completely. You know, on these same shows like Alone, you'll see the contestant, you know, after the first week of not eating, they really start to deplete to the point of where they're just kind of laying around and not doing much of anything. And that's making their situation worse too. So it's important to take care of yourself, like I said, physically and mentally. And mentally is push the negative thoughts away and think positive thoughts. Think, I'm trained. I know what I'm doing. I've taken this class. I've done this before. This is going to work out. I can do this. That's important.